So, hello all together. Just curious, does one of you have already touched couchdb? Okay. So if you know more than me, just let me know, then you can take over. Few words. It's eaten in Erlangen, exactly. Just a few words about me. I do everything. That's the short. No, I originally did some stuff with LDAP, directory synchronization, stuff like that. I jumped more and more in identity management to the past years. And at the moment, I'm doing consulting work. I'm hired to do programming, but in a team which does operate access management infrastructure. So I'm really in the middle of everything here. So if you need someone, let me know. The whole NoSQL part started around 10 years ago. It wasn't something new then, but it took popularity because there was new needs to get things done differently what relational database are offering. So in this time, different flavor of data store, databases, or whatsoever are showing up. They are document-based, they are graph-based, that's a cool hypey new thing which are many jumping on at the moment. They are column or key value based, or I see even some other flavors around, or some which offer different possibility to integrate into the same database key. There is a wide majority of products on the market. Some of them are purely open source, some of them are have an enterprise open source business model, and we today look a little bit more deeper into couchdb. So why do we choose that? I originally did some research and find out that there are different products on the market, different flavors. And my starting point was that we, in the current project I work, we have just a huge amount of file on Unix. And the data is produced on machines, on clients, which do send us some monitoring and some asset management data. They are mostly tab delimited. And to gain a certain flexibility during the last years, it's kind of tag-like. Some of them is kind of fixed structure, and some of them is kind of tag-like. So consider something a really weird set of different files which have different syntax and different column sets in the tab delimited setup. So we use mainly rsync to keep the files in sync over our different servers, which is working really well, I must say. It's one of the best products I see in that area. We replaced email as a transport medium in between because we realized rsync is far more stable, far more, yeah. And as you can see, email is quite an old technology. It's an old system. It runs already around 18 to 20 years. And maybe the most interesting part for us, we have no need to really enforce consistency at any point in time completely, or not to enforce. As I mentioned already, we get data collected from systems, so we get around 40,000 changes from the machines, and that's roughly 1 million change we have to feed into a system every day. And the machine park of that company is continuously growing. Yes, they go into the cloud area as well, but At the moment, it's mostly infrastructure as a service, and they just grow further on. So what's the advantages? It was really an easy thing. We have Red Hat there. It was 3 packages, and then we are done. It runs really rocket stable. With a few clicks, you set up the whole cluster situation with 3 boxes. And you can use it like a simple REST API from the web. So you have HTTP, you work with JSON, and you have a really well-documented API. So think of it as a generic REST API where you can just push and pull data. And as a part of the JSON thing, you can just extend the data. We don't have to think of it how it looks like and to go over the barriers of the tab delimited or comma separated or whatever value files we are currently working. Yeah. On the downside, we have to adjust. We need to change how our data is look like. At the moment, we have a huge bunch of files, so we need to rethink how things getting structured into JSON data structure before we feed them into the couchdb. And yes, we use plenty of grep still, even as part of the application. It has offered us, in some circumstances, the fastest access passes to data. When you work with files, it's even faster sometimes than Perl. We are on the way to refactor or rewrite some parts of the software, and I think the majority is really we have to rethink how software should look like. So what does couchdb offer us? As I said already, documents are in a JSON format. You have a simple HTTP access. You have a chance to use map reuse functions to get the data out of the machine as well, or to find the proper data elements. I just started with that. You can use indices, views, using design documents, and you have a relatively simple web GUI which offers you some basic stuff. I would say that you can do almost or really everything as well using the REST API. So you can reconfigure, you can change the cluster setup and so on. You can do everything using the REST API or using the HTTP JSON API as well. That's a, from my point of view, really stable cluster implementation, and it does replication. And it's stable. I think I said that again. Anyway, so to start, there is packages around, or for Windows or Mac OS X, there is a simple installer. It's quick and easy to install. There is, as I said already, a simple API, a simple web GUI, which allows you to do some configuration stuff. I tend to do some generic server configuration things, either in the configuration files directly or using the REST API. And I use the GUI as well to quickly check if all works fine, what I did on the command line. So we do an example setup. So we check first if the database is running, and then that's the welcome message from couchdb itself as a DBMS. That's not necessarily the first point in the documentation, but I would say just do it, even if you use simple password like I did. But the basic setup of couchdb is set without passwords, and that's a nonsense situation from my point of view. So, and then creating a database which is just gets your JSON documents feed is just a simple put in curl. I call that OS licenses, that database, and I get back a simple true if all went fine. And I can check quickly if the database are properly created, and yeah, looks good. So to get some initial data loaded. So I choose for the example here open source licenses. You can find more information from the GitHub page, where they have just some JSON-based data stuff around, where it's a huge playground if you need to feed some JSON data into a system. So I have to do some basic conversion things to get things in the syntax like couchdb is expecting it. The underscore ID is the primary key, the identifier, or the node name. It doesn't matter how you look at that thing. It has to be unique within a certain database to make it work. And I was so lucky that there is already some identifier in the data feed from the OS license. It's called ID, but not underscore ID. So I use quickly JQ to change that from ID to underscore ID. The bulk load itself then needs some docs prefix that he is probably load that, and to put that in a JSON array. So that's the quick and dirty thing I did here with Perl to just make things work. And then I get the file using curl and upload the thing. And for each individual entry he put in, or JSON document he put in the database, I would get an OK message back. I just truncate the output because that would be too huge here. So let's have a look if our data is already there. So let's search for the artistic 2.0 license. I think it's too small, I'm sorry, but that I just wanted to show you quickly how that data we got feed into the database look like when we get them back. And it's actually, that's the link in it, so that's the from the API from opensource.org, where I get all the data just to have something to feed and to demonstrate. If you look on the photo, I'm not totally sure if I spelled that right. You can look into the database and into the data as well, and it gives you the similar output. And here, just to quickly show you the list of the documents, how it looks there. So let's make a quick example how you can get access to the data. And for that, I like to get the example if we use the keywords section from the document. I just parse them out here quickly. So for the artistic 0.2 license, you get initials and OSI approved. And with that, we are going to, with this information, we like to get a view in a design document. The views will actually create indices on the database itself, which are then automatically updated when you are updating the documents or add new documents to the database. The whole thing is embedded in this called design documents. and are done using JavaScript. So the current talk is not about Perl, it's actually about JavaScript. And to get things working, I realize it's really small. Again, I just use JavaScript to iterate over the keywords in the document and just use the emit command here to feed them in all. You have to have the chance to give a key value pair in the emit, but for the current setup I just feed as a value just one, because I just use the key as index value, and that's what I wanted to have. I didn't use a reduce function. There are a few pre-implemented which are used use the power of Erlang to make things faster, but you are even able to write your own reduce function as well as in JavaScript. So how do we do that? After we got that fed to the database using the GUI here in the example, you are able to use just the underscore design, then you get the design document name, you can choose the view, and then you can choose which index you want to have, and then you use the search key. So far, nothing complicated. And you will get back some boilerplate about how many rows is in the index, what's the offset of the first one, and the ID, again, of the document. The key is just repeated, and the value as well. And here as well for the obsolete marked or keyword equals obsolete, which is part of this, so you get all the documents back. Or you get the ID of the documents from the index back. If you want to have the full documents back, that's quite an easy thing as well. You just add include docs equals true, and then I have to truncate here as well the output a little bit, but you see you just got the whole bunch as a JSON document back as well. So during the time I'm using couchdb so far, I have realized that you can even silly things can make happen, like file system full on databases. Databases usually are not happy with that situation. So I stopped it, moved the DB file, started it, and it just ran perfectly fine. Since March, around March I guess, I did 6 or 7 migrations of clusters. That's a really simple thing as well. Set up a new cluster with 3 nodes, that is install the package, just do some basic configuration on the config files, and if you are lazy you can just start the GUI, say you have 3 cluster nodes, add the cluster nodes, press run, and then you are done. Replication is easily to configure in the GUI as well. You can just add them. Some of them I just did one-time replication, and then I make a quick switch over. The last time I had a continuous replication where I use the old servers and replicate all the data to the new cluster, and I had time to switch the load balancers in the meantime, and then you are done as well. So what I always struggle with other database systems seems to be quite simple and easy with couchdb, so that makes me very happy. Conflicts. If you have a cluster, if you have even a single server, there is always the chance that you can update the same document. And to avoid that, the system of couchdb is very simple. If you update a certain document, you have to add the revision from the previous document. So there is an _ref attribute in the in the head of each document, and if you post, or no, if you put the new document, or if you send them back to the database, you have to mention on which version you did your changes. So if you got a problem, you get a HTTP error back, and you have to resolve it. That's quite a simple thing as well. So if you have to just go through a procedure where you get the newest document again. You go to reprocess your changes you wanted to make to that document. You put the change. You put the document back on the database, and if you got the same problem, you just have to do it again. So if you get used to implement this kind of loop where you do this checking, then all is done. So the database system is not doing transactional ACID stuff for you. It just gives you a hint and say, you do something wrong here, you have to maintain consistency yourself, and then you're done. Replication. So couchdb does no magic, actually. Replication is nothing else than what a client is to the server. So the database system itself, they don't care if a replication transfer is just a simple client, or if it's another server who is connecting to the remote system, who doing either push or pull-based replication. So there is no magic under the hood here. On the Perl side, there is some modules around which do some assistance for or access or whatever things. There is even modules which go into the deep of couchdb and allow you to write Perl-based views or whatsoever. I must say I haven't played with that. There is, I think, 2 or 3 modules which cope with getting access to the database, who try to simplify the API. I have played with them, but I must say I prefer Mojo User Agent. So the API is not that complicated to handle, and a simple user agent like LWP User Agent or Mojo User Agent will do the stuff for you. So yeah. So what's next? We're going to feed additional data into this database system. What we are doing currently? We're feeding currently one set of files, but there is different use cases which our application is using, and we like to end up with getting all the file stuff put into the database. We are still learning on how to improve things on the GUI side, on the data side, and try to match things like we want to have them. We will do more things with indices to get less often fetching full documents or getting single entities the right way and stuff like that. I will go ahead and try to break the system as well. So I need to find out where is my performance limits in case of amount of documents or amount of indices, or how does it work. There are some basic information in the document which says how many cores you need for how many indices, stuff like that. But I want just to see it, how it runs on that machine I have installed it. Finding other edge cases and doing far more prototyping. So the thing was, there is some old CGI stuff running around. We are currently on the way to rewrite partially based on modulicious. We want to change the database abstraction or the data abstraction in general. And personally, I prefer as well to have the chance to do a mix of things of Perl 5 and Perl 6. And that was one of the reasons why I looked for a simple database system where the access layer is not needed a lot of database driver and so on. So when you want to have more information, couchdb is an Apache project. It's very well documented. It has a huge docs part which is worth reading. You find almost all the gimmicks and things there, as well as the full documented API. And there is some guide which is more or less based on an older system, but give you rough ideas as well in the area of getting handle indices, views, and design documents done. And you'll find the source code on GitHub. So that was quick, I know, but but maybe they are. Are there any questions in the room? Oh. There is two ways to handle that. You can either do a reverse proxy in front. There is examples for Apache, Nginx, and a few others. Or it's written in Erlang. You can even put your own certificate into it for doing the SSL encryption. What I didn't show here is I do most of the stuff here with the admin user. Usually the second thing of what I do is just make the default databases are read for everyone. And that's a useless thing as well. So the second and third thing which I didn't show up here is I changed the security settings from each database, and I add some users which have just read-write access. And then you are usually done. If you consider using couchdb on the internet, maybe that's really number 2 and number 3 of the steps you should do after you created the database. Otherwise, it's just open for public for everyone.
Question at that point.
Yeah.
Does it initially listen only on localhost or on all interfaces?
That's a good question. I don't have it in my mind. It might be that it listens only on localhost, but I'm sure I haven't changed it just at the first place. Yes. Yeah.
That in combination with no password would be.
Yeah, I think they have a security vulnerability filed in the past. I haven't sure if they changed something. If you really go through the steps of the documentation, it's actually no problem, but there might be worse to scan for, what was the port, 5984 and have a look if you can get any access just unauthorized. Yeah. To be honest, I have had a look on Cassandra, I guess. Elastic, I had not that close look, to be honest. Some of them I struggled already at installation time. And then I stuck with couchdb. I haven't done like a proper evaluation of the full set. No, I didn't.
You're looking for
Yeah. Coming from delimited files, it could be column-based, it could even be key-value-based, depends on how you restructure your data. But it looks like, at least I hope that I have, based on the JSON format, the most flexibility to just work with what will happen in the future as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What about replication is done by just connecting another client that is copying data from one database to another.
Yeah.
How does this client know that a new document has appeared?
That's a really good question.
There are the kind of checkpoints like Kafka or so. You have just a regular client, so you don't have a binlog like in MySQL or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you need some kind of event to notify the client.
Yeah.
Okay, so replication is polling based.
No. Yeah. Both is implemented. You can push or pull. In the push wise, the database knows what is changed, so it's easy to push it out. And in the pull, it's what JJ is describing already.
But you said that the replication client, replicator is just a normal client. So this question is good. The normal client is the way to getting it in.
Yeah.
Okay, another one is able to describe,
Yeah. To be honest, the pull variant I haven't looked into deep. So if that is interesting for you, I may look it up. Yeah, mostly real time. As soon as the document gets stored, the cluster underneath does some magic which is outside of the replication scheme. I don't know how the cluster features are especially working together, but the replication does really document by document usually. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you said it, but you could put your couchdb as a dimensional consistency database. So when you do replication, you think that things work out pretty well, but it might not. Cassandra, for example, is completely different. I think with Cassandra you need to have a forum. You can be sure that when you do an update, every time you get the correct data. For couchdb, it's not important to get the correct data, it's important to get some data. So things might be messed up. Sometimes there's correct data at some point of time, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is no guarantee that in the same time, in a certain time frame, you get the correct data. Yeah. You can even be months behind and then restart replication and then he just start to follow up. It's like
For example, someone can update a document on the cluster node A,
someone
can update a document on node B, and then you have some kind of conflict because you cannot update the data from the cluster and then you need to pick it up manually, for example, which could never have happened in this kind of update.
Your project is kind of important, right? Because you get millions of links a day and next day it's a whole new day.
it's not especially picky or I don't need that strict enforced constraint of data that it all fits together, because that's not the case either currently with files. So we have the same situation at the moment already. Files are usually just written and then you don't know if you already get the old or the new data. Any more? Okay.